Hey everybody, welcome to another Deep Dive with yours truly.
Glad to be here.
Today we're tackling something pretty big and pretty complex.
That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly right. And this one's called evolutionary culturology.
Ev cult for short.
Ev cult. Yeah, have you ever heard of this before?
I have. It's kind of a fascinating way to look at how systems work.
Systems? Okay, so like what kind of systems are we talking about?
Well, it could be anything really, like biological systems,
Okay.
social systems, technological systems.
So basically anything that has like parts that interact with each other.
Exactly. It's all about how those parts fit together and behave as a whole.
That's a pretty big claim to be able to analyze any system with just one framework.
Well, that's what's so cool about Ev cult. It's like it gives us these universal laws that apply across all these different domains.
Okay, so there are laws in Ev cult.
There are three main laws, actually, and they govern how the individual components of a system interact and behave.
And you mentioned something about components of a system.
Right. So Ev cult calls these components fractal Halon partons.
Fractal Halon partons. Okay, now we're getting into some serious jargon.
It might sound complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Think of those Russian nesting dolls.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Each doll is a whole unto itself, but it's also part of a larger doll.
So like a system within a system within a system.
Exactly. These Halon partons are those nested systems within systems all the way down.
Okay, so like a cell is a whole system, but it's also part of a tissue, which is part of an organ, and so on.
Precisely. And the fascinating thing is that those three laws of Ev cult apply at every level of this nested hierarchy.
All right, I'm starting to get the picture. So let's dive into those three laws. What's the first one?
The first law is integration and disintegration. It's all about how these Halon partons come together or break apart.
Okay, so integration's like coming together and disintegration's like falling apart.
You got it.
Straightforward enough. But how does this play out in a more complex system, like, say, a society?
Well, think about how people form groups and communities. When people share common goals and values, they integrate into social structures. They form families, neighborhoods, political parties. But when those shared bonds weaken, we see disintegration. People become isolated, communities fragment.
So like during times of social unrest or political polarization, we see a disintegration of those shared values.
Exactly. And understanding those dynamics of integration and disintegration can help us make sense of why societies flourish or falter.
That's pretty powerful stuff. Okay, what's the second law?
The second law is cooperation and competition. This one is pretty intuitive. We see it everywhere in nature. And in human societies, organisms cooperate to survive. Companies compete for market share, political parties vie for power.
Right. It's like that constant push and pull between working together and striving to be the best.
And finding the right balance between those two, cooperation and competition, that's crucial for any system's success. Too much competition, and you get chaos and instability. Too much cooperation, and you might stifle innovation and progress.
It's like you need a bit of healthy competition to drive improvement, but you also need cooperation to achieve shared goals.
Precisely. And this dynamic plays out in everything from ecosystems to economic markets.
Okay, on to the third and final law. What is it?
The third law is command and autonomy. It's all about the balance between centralized control and individual freedom.
Okay, so like in a company, you have the CEO giving the orders, but the employees also need some level of autonomy to do their jobs effectively.
That's a good example. And the balance between command and autonomy can vary widely across different systems. A military organization might have a high degree of command, while a creative arts collective might prioritize autonomy.
So it's like that classic tension between order and freedom.
Yeah.
You need some level of order to function effectively, but too much control can stifle creativity and innovation.
Absolutely. And this dynamic plays a huge role in shaping the culture and behavior of groups and organizations.
Okay, so we've got these three laws: integration, disintegration, cooperation, competition, and command autonomy. It's starting to make sense, but I'm still a little fuzzy on how we actually apply these concepts in the real world.
That's where the Ev cult ABM comes in the agent-based model. It's a visual simulation that helps us see these laws in action.
Oh, cool. So it's like a computer program that shows us how these laws work.
Exactly. Imagine a bunch of little agents on your computer screen representing individuals in a society or cells in an organism or even companies in a market.
So it's like a virtual laboratory for systems experiments.
Precisely. And what's really cool is that we can control those laws with sliders. We can crank up integration to see what happens when everyone is working together, or we can increase competition to see how conflict and rivalry play out.
So we can actually see how tweaking these laws affects the behavior of the system.
And the ABM is color-coded, so you can visually see how those laws are impacting the system. For example, Pink might represent integration, while blue shows disintegration green, might represent cooperation, while red shows competition.
So just by watching those agents move and interact and seeing those colors change, we can start to understand how those simple rules can lead to incredibly complex patterns of behavior.
Exactly, and that's where the concept of emergence comes in.
Emergence, okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully grasp it.
Well, in the context of Evcol emergence is the idea that complex patterns and behaviors can arise from the interaction of simple rules without any central control.
So it's like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Precisely. You get these unexpected and often beautiful outcomes simply from the interaction of these basic rules.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So with the EvCult ABM, we can actually see this emergence happening in real time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can tweak those sliders representing the three laws and watch as complex patterns and behaviors emerge organically from the interaction of those simple rules. It's a powerful way to visualize and understand the dynamics of systems.
This is incredible. I'm starting to see the world in a whole new light, thanks to EvCult. So even though we've been talking about social systems, these three laws apply to all kinds of systems, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the most powerful aspects of EvCult. It provides a universal framework for understanding how systems work across all domains. Whether we're looking at a biological organism, a social group, an ecosystem, or even a technological system, these same three laws are at play.
Okay, I'm officially hooked.
Okay.
Let's dive deeper into how these laws manifest in different domains and what insights they can offer.
I'm happy to explore that further. Welcome back.
So we've got these three laws: integration, disintegration, cooperation, competition, and command autonomy.
Right.
They seem pretty simple when you lay them out like that.
They are actually, the beauty of EvCult is that it takes these fundamental concepts
Right, yeah.
and it shows how they can explain such a wide range of phenomena.
Yeah, but how do we actually see these laws in action?
Well, let's start by looking at some real-world examples.
Okay.
Think about a biological system like the human body.
Okay.
Trillions of cells, each one a tiny Holland parton working together to keep you alive.
Right. It's like a perfectly orchestrated symphony.
Exactly, and all those cells are constantly integrating and disintegrating, cooperating and competing, responding to commands and exercising autonomy.
So even at the cellular level, these three laws are shaping how things work.
Absolutely. And this is where we can start to see how EvCult explains things like altruism and selfishness.
Okay, that sounds kind of contradictory. How can a system based on cooperation also produce selfishness?
Well, remember, competition is also a fundamental law.
Right.
And in some cases, acting selfishly can actually benefit the system as a whole.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about a mother bird protecting her chicks. She's willing to risk her own life to ensure their survival.
Yeah, that seems pretty selfless.
It is from the individual bird's perspective, but from the system's perspective, it's about ensuring the survival of the genes, even if it means sacrificing one individual.
So it's like a higher level of cooperation.
Exactly. The mother's genes are passed down to her chicks, so protecting them is a way of ensuring the continuation of her lineage.
That's fascinating. So even acts of apparent altruism can be explained through this lens of system-level cooperation and competition.
And we see similar dynamics in social systems. Think about how people form groups and communities. We're driven by a need to belong, to cooperate, to achieve shared goals, but there's also competition for resources, status, and influence within those groups.
So it's like that age-old struggle for power.
Exactly, but EvCult suggests that those struggles are not just about individual ambition, they're also about the dynamics of the system itself.
So by understanding those dynamics, we can start to make sense of why some societies thrive while others crumble.
Precisely, we can see how different levels of integration, cooperation, and command shape the culture, the economy, the political landscape.
This is pretty heavy stuff. But what about those less tangible systems like the internet or the global economy? They don't have physical bodies or clear hierarchies.
That's where it gets really interesting. Remember, those three laws are universal. They apply to any system with interacting components. So think about the internet. You have billions of devices, all interconnected, exchanging information, cooperating to run applications, competing for bandwidth.
And there's that tension between control and freedom that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. You have governments and corporations trying to exert command over the flow of information, while individuals are pushing for greater autonomy and privacy.
It's like a constant tug of war.
And those dynamics are constantly shifting and evolving, just like any complex system.
So EvCult gives us a way to understand those shifts and make sense of the patterns that emerge.
Exactly. And that's one of the most powerful things about this framework. It helps us see the connections between seemingly disparate phenomena.
So it's not just about understanding how individual systems work, it's about understanding how they all fit together.
Precisely. It's about seeing the bigger picture and recognizing that we're all part of this massive interconnected web.
Okay, my brain is officially starting to hurt, but in a good way.
That's a good sign. It means you're starting to think systemically.
So now that we've got a handle on how these laws apply to different types of systems, let's talk about what we can actually do with this knowledge.
That's the exciting part. EvCult isn't just about understanding how things work. It's about using that understanding to create positive change.
Okay, now you're talking my language. I'm all about turning knowledge into action.
Well, get ready, because we're about to dive into the practical applications of EvCult. So we've talked about how these 3 laws of EvCult can help us understand different types of systems.
Yeah, like from cells to societies to the internet.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these same principles keep popping up.
Right, and the really exciting thing is that this knowledge isn't just theoretical. It can actually help us solve real-world problems.
Okay, now we're talking, because I'm all about taking action and making a difference. So how does EvCult help us do that?
Well, it gives us a framework for understanding complex challenges and identifying leverage points for intervention.
Leverage points. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means finding those places within a system where small changes can have a big impact.
So it's like finding the right pressure point to apply force.
Exactly. And EvCult helps us do that by understanding the underlying dynamics of the system.
Can you give me an example?
Sure, let's take the issue of climate change.
Okay, that's a big one.
It is, and it's a perfect example of how EvCult can help us think about solutions in a more systemic way.
So how would EvCult approach something like climate change?
Well, a traditional approach might focus on reducing carbon emissions through things like technological innovation or policy changes.
Right, which are important, but maybe not enough on their own.
Exactly, because climate change isn't just an environmental problem, it's a systemic problem. It's intertwined with our economic systems, our social systems, our political systems. They're all connected.
So it's like you have to address the whole system, not just individual parts of it.
Precisely. And EvCult helps us see those connections and understand how those systems are contributing to the problem.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we use EvCult to find those leverage points?
Well, we start by asking questions like, what are the economic incentives that drive our reliance on fossil fuels? How do our consumption patterns and lifestyles contribute to the problem? What social norms and political structures are hindering progress towards sustainable solutions?
It's like we need to zoom out and see the big picture.
Exactly. And once we understand those system dynamics, we can start to identify places where we can intervene effectively.
So maybe it's about changing social norms around consumption or creating economic incentives for sustainability or building political will for policy change.
Right. It's about finding those points where even small changes can create ripple effects throughout the system.
I'm starting to see how powerful this could be, but it also seems like a lot of work.
It can be challenging, but remember, we don't have to do it alone. One of the great things about EvCult is that it recognizes the power of collective action.
So it's not just about individual change, it's about working together to shift the entire system.
Exactly. Think about social movements throughout history. They've often been successful because they understood these principles of integration, cooperation, and challenging existing power structures.
So by learning from those movements and applying the principles of EvCult, we can be even more effective in creating positive change.
Precisely, and that's what makes this so exciting. We have the tools and the knowledge to make a real difference in the world.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to learn more about EvCult and see how I can apply it in my own life.
I encourage you to do so. There's a wealth of resources available online, including the EvCult blog, where you can connect with others who are exploring these ideas.
Awesome. I'll definitely check that out. And thanks for joining us today for this fascinating deep dive into evolutionary culturology.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in and keep those brains buzzing. See you on the next episode.